It is time for another episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I'm Jason Floyd, always joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. Which, first off, happy birthday, Pete. Pete's birthday was a couple of days ago, so hopefully your birthday was a good one, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Yes, it was great. Just spent time with family and taught at the academy, so it was a good birthday. But thank you very much.
Awesome. Of course, we're going to preview UFC Seattle. Of course, goes down on Saturday. Lock time right now, 6 p.m. Eastern Time main card, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, of course, headlined by Henry Cejudo and Song Yadong. Co-main event, key matchup between Fluffy Hernandez and Brennan Allen. Of course, you got any questions on the fights, be sure to leave those in the chat. Of course, we got our Discord channel, totally free to join. We got our DraftKings contest. Just made that contest here a couple minutes ago, so you can sign up for that contest right now. Of course, congratulations to Tristan Carroll taking down last week's contest. Of course, he really had Jerry Cannonier was really the key to that lineup there, scoring 110 points. He even had Dontel Mays in his lineup at .80, which I had Dontel Mays too. And he goes out there and a great performance there by his opponent in that one. So we have our contest up there right now, so be sure to sign up for that. Of course, if you got any questions, you can leave those in the chat if you're watching us live on YouTube, or if you're watching this after the fact, you can leave a comment here on the YouTube video, or you can hop into Discord channel. Myself or Pete or anybody in the community will have some conversations with you. But Pete, let's get right into UFC Seattle and talking about game theory here. And one of the things that me and Pete were talking right before the show is, damn, I like a lot of underdogs this week, and that's kind of a scary thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome for betting. For DFS, it's tough because, you're probably going to have to leave some salary on the table. It's just, I was telling you before the show that it's just so difficult nowadays. It is very difficult nowadays competing with Sims. If you're not using Sims, then you are really, really, at a disadvantage. For single entry contest, of course, that's the way around it. But just in general, like the fight predictions and the fights themselves, I don't know, man. It seems like so many fights are a coin flip. It's just like the most volatile fighters amongst the corporation or amongst the UFC banner, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we're just used to how it used to be, or I'm not adapting with the times. I tried to introduce the algorithm, and it was fine. It went 7-5 last week, but the finishes really kind of threw a wrench in those plans. So it's something that I don't know if I can really account for with the algorithm. But I think the algorithm is definitely helpful for fights that go the distance. So we'll have to see, right? It's the name of the game. It's fighting. So it's very difficult to predict.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I've always said that I think MMA DFS is one of the harder DFS to play just because of the unknown variables that are out there. Nicholas, I appreciate your super chats. As always, appreciate those super chats that do come in here. Of course, you got any questions, be sure to line those up in the chat right now. But one of the things is I kind of look at from a game theory aspect of, looking at the top three fights, I'll flat out tell you I like the underdog in all three of them. I don't know if I'll necessarily get to Henry Cejudo in my core lineup. When I was just kind of, playing around with some lineups earlier today. But I will tell you this, I do like Brennan Allen. If it was a 5-round fight, I think my thought process might be a little different. I do like Rob Font. I think it's more about the matchup for Rob Font. I think that when you talk about if this was Dominic Cruz, I probably would have been on the Dominic Cruz side of the equation in this matchup, just because of what he can do in terms of the wrestling. But Matsumoto is not a wrestler. It's a fight that I do expect to stay on the feet. The only concern I would have about Rob Font is that chin getting checked. I mean, we've seen him in fights where he's landed 3-1, but then he gets dropped 2 or 3 times in the matchup. You think about that fight against Chito Vera. But then there is some unknowns like Abdul-Malik at 9,700. You love him, but man, this has been the year of prospects going down. I mean, you just look at every card this year, Pete. We've had 1, 2, guys that we looked at, prospects said, man, we really like him. And then they, with him, I think it's more of, what do we not know? Do you trust a Javid Basharat after being a 9-1 favorite in his last matchup? And, Julius Walker, Menifield is one that I'm scared to get to. I'm really scared to get to. And, I do like that Menifield's back at Fortis MMA, but, I think Walker's a little green.
Yeah. I mean, anytime we have Dana White Contender Series fighters coming onto to make their debut, and they are at such a large price tag, right? You just have to look at their opponent. And I do think that if they're fighting a fellow entry level opponent, that we can favor them pretty significantly. So I think that Abdul-Malik, the biggest problem for him is his cardio. His cardio abandoning him, scrambles getting out of the way, getting out of control, and him gassing out and possibly getting finished late. But we haven't seen that. He's been able to pull it off every single fight. He's just a force. If Dana White Contender Series fighters are debuting against UFC veterans, or they're getting put in there against a fighter that's had several fights within the octagon, it's something to kind of pay attention to and take note of. I think that the price tag is ridiculous for Abdul-Malik, but what he does in every single fight, I guess it's warranted, right? I mean, he really goes out there. He's like Terrence McKinney type of fighter, going out there trying to finish you from the get-go, has good wrestling, has very, very good power, good ground and pound. Possible holes in the jiu-jitsu game. We will see if a situation like that comes. But on the Contender Series, he was going up against a very crafty grappler, and was reversed, was put in some sticky situations, was having to defend some takedowns. So I think that he passed that test of that type of fighter. Obviously, anybody can give up their back and get choked out. So one error can cost you your entire bankroll. It can ruin your entire night. It can flip the slate on its head. But I think the most likely situation is that the price tag's warranted there. And you got some crazy UFC veterans in there against guys that have relatively no UFC experience. Rob Font has 18 UFC fights going up against Matsumoto, who has 2 UFC fights. You have several others. Ian Cutelaba with 17 UFC fights going up against Aslan's 2 UFC fights. Andre Fili, 23 UFC fights going up against Melquizael Costa with 4 UFC fights. So, it's old school matchmaking, pairing, up-and-comers against veterans to see if they pass the test or not. But experience is some of the most valuable, the most valuable skills that you can have in an MMA fight, right? Like, you've done it double, triple, quadruple the amount of times that your opponent has against high-level opposition day in and day out. Like, even Alonzo Menifield, a guy that I don't really trust, but he has 14 UFC fights going up against a guy in Julius Walker who is debuting. So it's just like, it's kind of crazy, and you have to figure out which fight you're going to put weight into their experience, and which one you think that their best times are kind of past them. So it's hard. It's a hard game to play. But for whatever reason, we're back here each and every week. I do love the fights. Turning more towards, sports betting, because I find myself enjoying that a little bit more than DFS nowadays. But I do love seeing our community succeed. And it is nice when you have the correct 6-for-6 lineup, the optimal lineup, and you take down a big tournament, whether you split or not. It is nice knowing, like, oh, damn, okay, I had a good read on that card. Few and far in between, but it is nice once that happens every once in a while.
Yeah, I will tell you this. I'm trying to increase my bankroll tonight. I made a bet on Team USA tonight. So got a little plus money on the spread. And as I was just looking at that spread has gone the other way. So I got on it right in time. But
perfect.
Yeah. We'll see if we have 3 fights in 9 seconds to start tonight's match.
Yeah, right. That was crazy. I mean, I don't know anything about hockey, but hey, 3 fights to kick it off when other sports don't even try in the All-Star game or anything like that. It was cool to really see, like, actual competitiveness and fire within fellow countries.
Yeah, Field Yates, who's an NFL reporter, he had a great tweet the other day. It was basically like, hey, NFL, we're a flag football game. NBA, we don't play defense. NHL, it's like we're throwing haymakers 3 seconds into an exhibition. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah. So I'm sure I'm gonna be heading out with some friends tonight to watch that one. So looking forward to that. But let's get right into UFC Seattle, of course, main event. Henry Cejudo taking on Song Yadong. Song Yadong is a -270 betting fair. Cejudo +220 on DraftKings. Cejudo 7,300. $8,900 for Song Yadong, and over on FanDuel, $20 for Yadong and $15 for Cejudo. Of course, we saw Cejudo come back last year after that 3-year retirement, which, of course, we know never to believe that word in mixed martial arts because 99% of the time, retirements never last. And of course, you look at these 2 fights he's had since coming back, split decision loss against Aljo, unanimous decision loss against Merab. And prior to that, of course, Henry was one of the best at 25 and at 35. Song Yadong coming off that unanimous decision loss last year, so it's been 11 months since we've seen him back at UFC 299. He does have a 3-inch reach advantage in this one, Pete.
Yeah, so I like Song Yadong here in this matchup. I think that, for both of them having 14 UFC fights, you have Henry Cejudo obviously having the championship experience, being in there with some of the best guys nipping at his heels, and just overall mixed martial arts and martial arts experience. An Olympian, retiring from the sport. Do I think that some of his best years were kind of left on the shelf? I do. He has come back into the sport. And he went to a split decision with Aljamain Sterling, and then he got dominated essentially against Merab Dvalishvili. Both stylistic matchups that kind of cater to where he could succeed in a fight of like, all right, your opponent's going to initiate grappling, and that's basically where you want all the fights. And he was still unable to come out on top. He was able to win some rounds against them and made it very close against Aljamain Sterling. Won a round against Merab Dvalishvili. But that they both welcomed the grappling. Now, when he's going up against an anti-wrestler in Song Yadong who's looking to punish him with boxing, has solid takedown defense overall, 75% takedown defense, 72% takedown defense. He has shown that he can get taken down, but for the most part, his hips are good. He made Ricky Simone shoot for a ton of times and was able to defend, beat him up standing. And I think that's the difference maker here. It's the combinations. It's the striking. I've never really been a fan of Cejudo striking. Yes, he has a good leg kick. He has an okay right hand. But I think that he's very hittable. And I just don't know if anybody's really exposed it yet. And I think that Song Yadong could do so. Obviously, I have some concerns if Henry Cejudo is able to get in and chain some takedowns together. But do I expect him to do that for 3 rounds or more? Not really, because his volume, with his takedowns isn't crazy. I think he needs to really lace up those wrestling shoes and attempt 10 plus takedowns in this fight. I just don't know if he's going to. And even if he gets 10, I don't know if he lands more than 3. So, this is a situation where I think Song Yadong, can defend some takedowns and punish him on the feet with some good boxing. I don't really fault Song Yadong for losing to Petr Yan. And if you did MMA math, you would say, well, Cejudo went to a split decision with Aljamain Sterling, who is now fighting at 145 pounds. Why the hell am I not going to pick Cejudo over Song Yadong? I think there's a path for Cejudo to have success. It's just 25 minutes. Can he do it? He's not a finisher. So that this is going to get extended. If he were to knock out or submit, Song Yadong would be extremely surprised. You need him to lace up his wrestling shoes for 3 rounds at least. And I just don't think it's going to be all that easy. So give me Song Yadong here. I think that he wins a decision. I think that he might hurt Cejudo. I think he might cut Cejudo. I think the damage criteria is going to, lie with Song Yadong. And I think that he's going to end up winning. I think he'll end up winning 4 rounds. I think it's going to be one pretty good round for Cejudo early with some adjustments for Song Yadong. But, it is the flyweight division. I mean, it is the bantamweight division. So it's a competitive division to begin with. On any given night, these guys can beat each other. But I'm going to go with Song Yadong. I think the striking's too much.
And by the way, Cejudo has hinted about going back down to flyweight after this matchup, which, I mean, at his age, I don't know if I really love that one. But, yeah, I'm with you. If Cejudo can, get this matchup to the ground, and I'm with you that I do think this is going 25 minutes. So maybe, maybe this could be a very well live betting opportunity. Maybe Cejudo gets off to a hot start in this matchup, and maybe then you live bet Saul Yadong, and that's something that me and Pete have talked about on the show. When it comes to MMA betting, live betting is some of the best things to do out there, because sometimes you can really find an edge, especially if you maybe sense someone's maybe slowing down, or the tide is starting to turn there in the matchup. But from a DFS perspective, I don't mind getting to Cejudo, but there's some other underdogs that I think I would rather get to before I get to him. I will say this: I think when I started hand building my first lineup, I think I had 4 underdogs in my lineup, and I was like, okay, this is too much.
Damn. Yeah. I'm having a hard time, and some cards I have a great read on, and this card with so many changes and everything, like at one moment I like some underdogs, and then I'm talking myself out of it. So I'm going to need your help this week more than ever, and I want to hear the underdogs that you definitely have circled.
And I think another thing that when you were talking at the beginning of the show, talking about these fighters who have come from Dana White's Contender Series, and now they're getting these bigger opportunities. Also, the fact of there's guys on this card who've only fought in the Apex. Now they're fighting in front of a sold-out arena. So I think that's something also to kind of pay attention to when we're talking about these matchups here. Next up, we got Brendan Allen taking on Anthony Hernandez. Brendan Allen is a plus 255 betting underdog, minus 330 for Anthony Hernandez. Hernandez is $9,000 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Brendan Allen, $7,200 on DK. And $12 on FanDuel. Allen is coming off that unanimous decision loss back in September against Imavov. Prior to that, he had won 7 in a row. 7 of his 12 UFC wins have come via submission. Fluffy Hernandez on the other side, he's won 6 in a row, coming off a win against Michel Pereira. 6 of his 7 UFC wins have come via stoppage. And in his last 5 fights, and I think this is really going to be probably a talking point for me and Pete here, is in his last 5 fights, Anthony Hernandez has landed 35 takedowns. He's got at least 8 takedowns in 3 of those matchups. And I was telling Pete before the show, if this was a 5-round fight, I think I would have a lot more interest in Anthony Hernandez potentially wearing down Brendan Allen in the 4th and 5th round. But as I was telling Pete before the show, like, if you tell me this thing plays out on the feet, I really like Brendan Allen.
Yeah, it's tricky, man. This fight's so tricky. We've seen them fight already, and we saw Brendan Allen put Anthony Hernandez in some sticky situations. But ultimately, the majority of the fight was Anthony Fluffy Hernandez dominating Brendan Allen with that pace and pressure, and that's the same type of thing that he's been doing to everybody on this hot streak. He just kind of puts you in the blender and he melts you down, dude. Like he goes out there, he throws pretty solid striking volume. I think the striking's close between them both, but it's the takedowns, it's the wrestling, it's the kind of GSP type of going from the striking to the wrestling, back to the striking, back to the wrestling, just mixing it up and just like not necessarily doing things in a predictable manner, which being unpredictable is essentially why Anthony Hernandez has been succeeding so much. People can't keep up with him. Never mind, can they guess what he's doing? So, I think that the UFC experience lies with Brendan Allen here with 15 fights versus 9 for Fluffy Hernandez. The striking is a little interesting. It's super, super close according to my metrics. The algorithm went 7-5 last week, but I do think it does show and shine some light on some close matchups and where we can have an edge in certain ones. The striking is very, very close according to the metrics. The one thing that you can't really, put your finger on is why is Anthony Fluffy Hernandez so soft and susceptible to the body? Like, I mean, you go back to the Marcus Perez fight. You go back to the Kevin Holland fight. There are numerous fights where he's been hurt to the body where you almost think like, okay, like at any moment the fight's going to be over because he cannot absorb a shot to the body. It's very hard for me to see that as a striking coach, as an MMA coach, and trust him completely. I understand the offensive skill set that he has, but I do worry about that body susceptibility. But on the flip side, like Brendan Allen can't really take all the greatest damage to his chin. So, oh man, rematches sometimes don't go the way the first one went, and a lot of times they are completely different. And both fighters make adjustments, and sometimes the person who lost comes out as the victor in the second matchup. I think that Fluffy Hernandez can have similar success to how he did in the first matchup with good takedowns and good pressure and ground and pound and submission attempts. But I do think that Brendan Allen's a lot better since then. I think Fluffy is too, but it's just like who Fluffy's been having crazy success against, I think is not on the same level as Brendan Allen. Like Michel Pereira, I think is very good. Roman Kopylov is a very good striker, not the best defensive wrestler. We also have Emma Shabazian, who's the horrible grappler. Josh Fremd, relatively unproven. Rodolfo Vieira, very, very talented jiu-jitsu practitioner, but gassed completely in that matchup. So, like, I can poke holes in some of those matchups. And then when I look at Brendan Allen, who he's fought, Imavov, who just knocked out Israel Adesanya, Chris Curtis, who's very tough, Paul Craig, good submission artist, but nothing really special, Silva, Andre Muniz, Jacob Malkoon. Like, I think having a fight against Jacob Malkoon can prepare you for Anthony Fluffy Hernandez's wrestling. And we saw Brendan Allen pick up a victory there. I didn't necessarily know. I'm trying to remember if I actually scored that for Brendan Allen or not. But he scored 82.9. So say you take the decision out, he still would have scored 52.9. And he was live in there, and he's reversing situations, and he's taking down Malkoon. I just think that this is a betting line where Anthony Fluffy Hernandez has looked like an unstoppable force, and that's why he is, a 3-1 favorite. But I think people think like Brendan Allen's just some regular guy. Brendan Allen's one of the best in the world. Jason, man, I wasn't really considering Brendan Allen all that much, but you do make a good point that if he's able to keep this on the feet, I think that he can, find some success against Fluffy Hernandez. And Brendan Allen has the submission skills as well. So let's say he hurts Fluffy. He could club and sub him. He has that ability, just like Marcus Perez locked up that anaconda choke after throwing a body kick. I'm still going to pick Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. My algorithm loves him. But I think from an underdog situation, like you could get to a Brendan Allen in a decision, and he'll pay off at that 7,200 price tag. So I think we need this fight one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the line is just a little too wide in this one. I mean, I have no problem that Anthony Hernandez being the favorite in this one. I just think that it's a little closer fight. But look, if this was a 5-round fight, I think I would have much more interest in Anthony Hernandez at 9,000 just because of the stat I mentioned. He's got 35 takedowns in his last 5 fights. He had 10 takedowns in his last matchup. That was a 5-round matchup. So that's kind of where I'm looking at in terms of him. But Brendan Allen is one of the underdogs I do have circled for this fight card. Next up, we got a matchup that is a late replacement here, as Rob Font was supposed to take on Dominic Cruz, but we know Dominic Cruz has now retired after suffering a shoulder injury and deciding it's time for him to go. Gene Matsumoto stepping up here. He's actually a betting favorite at -155, +134. Rob Font. Font 7,600 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. Gene is $600 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. Of course, Rob was a notable underdog in his last matchup against Kyle Phillips. I want to say he was like a plus 300 betting underdog in his last matchup against Kyle Phillips. He is 2-4 in his last 6, seeking back-to-back wins for the first time since 2020-2021. Of course, Rob typically has been a distance fighter in the UFC. 10 of his 18 fights in the UFC have gone the distance. Matsumoto 2-0 in the UFC. He is coming off a decision win against Brad Katona. In his 2 UFC fights, he has been taken down 9 times by Dan Arquetta and 3 times by Brad Katona. Would not imagine that's the case here, but this is Rob to me is one of those underdogs on this card I like, and it's more about the matchup just because Pete, I'm not expecting to see Matsumoto decide to lace up the wrestling shoes.
Yeah, so very interesting fight between Matsumoto and Rob Font. I mean, you have Rob Font, the UFC veteran with 18 UFC fights. Gene Matsumoto with only 2 UFC fights. Matsumoto, very, very good Muay Thai, good hands, good submission skill set about him too. He can go to the wrestling well, but it's something that he really hasn't had to resort to all that much. He very, very aggressive striking style, and we've seen people that stand toe to toe with Rob Font, how that jab of Font really starts to find its mark, and how his boxing combinations are crisp, and he can land and outland you. But Rob Font, every now and then, he'll get hit with a shot and his legs go right out. That durability is little bit of a question mark nowadays, as it used to never even be a part of the equation. Um, but Rob Font's experience is exceptional. I mean, he comes from the New England scene, being a Tampa guy, coming up here to New England, training at Yadong, Boston. I know Rob pretty well, fought on the same card as him, fought one of my fighters early on. And he's really taken it to the next level, fighting in the same promotion that I have. He's probably the biggest name to come out of a New England promotion, even though he's a Tampa guy. And he's had so much success, 18 UFC fights. You know that he was already training for an opportunity like this against Dominic Cruz. I think the wrestling of Cruz and the footwork could have frustrated Rob Font tremendously. Just the wrestling, getting taken down. His takedown defense is poor still, in my opinion. It's poor takedown defense. He does get back to his feet pretty well, but for whatever reason, his reaction time on the takedowns is pretty slow. And in my head, I think it was back in 2017, I still have memory of Rob Font getting submitted via guillotine against Pedro Munoz, if I'm not mistaken. So, there is a little bit, yeah, Pedro Munoz, 2017, round one. There is a little bit of a worry in the submission or in grappling department against Gene Matsumoto, who has a pretty damn good guillotine himself. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. But I don't think that's like in his DNA all that much. Like, it's there, but I think he prefers to strike. And I don't think he's been in too many matchups where he's not the A side in the striking. I think that the power of Matsumoto is probably better than Rob Font, but I think just the experience, the eyes, the setups, the feints, the fakes, the volume, the jab, it's all going to point to Rob Font, for me. And I know that Matsumoto was also training for a fight, I think a couple weekends from now. So they're both coming in here in good shape. And, Rob Font under the tutelage of Faraz Zahabi at TriStar, I think that we're on to something, because I did not see him beating Kyler Phillips. I just didn't. Kyler Phillips is a guy that I was extremely high on, a lot higher on than Gene Matsumoto. And I like the way that Phillips was. He can strike. His jiu-jitsu's crazy. His takedowns are good. His kicks are great. Matsumoto, I think, is very talented and dangerous. But in my personal eyes, I hold Kyler Phillips a little bit better than Gene Matsumoto. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Rob Font here as an underdog. I was kind of shocked that he is an underdog. But at 7,600, I think that it just makes too much sense for the 18-fight veteran to not be a part of my lineup. So give me Rob Font here, 7,600.
Yeah, my only concern with Rob Font would be is whether he can end up being in the ultimate lineup, at 7,600, just because if he doesn't have any knockdowns and maybe he doesn't try to mix in, taking the fight to the ground, can he get enough volume to actually, get you, let's just say 85, 90 points. My kind of fear is that his score is in the 65 to 75 range, and I just don't know if that's going to, be enough to get you where you want to be in these contests. Next up, we got a Fighting Nerds product here, and of course, if you watch us, me and Pete we're all in on that Fighting Nerds team. Gene Silva taking on Melsik here. Silva currently on an 11-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC. All those have come via TKO and KO. Melsik on the other side, he is coming off a unanimous decision win against Tucker Lutz, but that was always back in July of 2023. He had 3 canceled fights in 2024. His last fight, which was supposed to be in the summer of last year, ended up pulling out of the matchup due to a torn labrum. He is 3-1 in the UFC, and 2 of those 3 wins have come by decision. And look, these are 2 guys that want to strike, so I do wonder kind of maybe Silva tries to get this one to the ground here. And I was telling Pete right before the show, one of my favorite bets of the week. It's not great lines on this, but I really like the over 1.5 rounds on this fight.
Yeah, I think I can get behind that too. I mean, Gene Silva is a very interesting character. I mean, he really, gets into the fight. He barks like a dog. He bites down on his mouthpiece, throws heavy combinations. And he's so aggressive that a lot of people just kind of shell up and they don't like it. And it turns strikers into wrestlers, and next thing you know, you're waking up because you just got knocked out. Drew Dober even got knocked out. Charles Jourdain got knocked out. I almost said Owen Wilson. Weston Wilson got knocked out. So yeah, like Gene Silva's a fantastic fighter and very dangerous inside the octagon. And I also think that he has the ace up his sleeve to go and resort to his grappling if he needs to. I can't imagine that a guy a part of the Fighting Nerds team isn't practicing all areas of a fight, especially when there's such a an intelligent team. They definitely want to take advantage of their opponent's weaknesses. And Melsik Baghdasaryan's weakness is in the wrestling and grappling. I mean, Melsik's a fantastic striker, very good kicker, very smart and great reactions on the feet. But when it hits the mat, man, his game is completely non-existent. So I think that Gene Silva can make this look very easy. But I also worry about the ego of Gene Silva. You know, every now and then we have to have ego checks of like where a guy is used to having so much success and used to being the alpha that he doesn't want to go in a different direction in a fight because it feels like it makes him, you know, almost like less of a man, like because he's going to start going to the takedown well instead of, you know, trading on the feet if he's on the losing end of some exchanges. And I can honestly see Melsik Baghdasaryan knocking Gene Silva out. I really can. His striking's that talented. I don't see a guy from Fighting Nerds making all that many mistakes. If I'm right and Melsik knocks him out, you guys can clip it, and you know my epiphany was correct. But I actually will trust in the camp that Gene Silva, even if he starts getting pieced up on the feet or just kicked too much, that he will make the necessary adjustments to either finish the fight late where Melsik tends to fade, or he'll take the fight where he has a great advantage on the mat over Melsik Baghdasaryan. But yeah, if this is a 15-minute kickboxing fight, these odds are absolutely insane. And I wouldn't be getting behind these odds if it was a 15-minute kickboxing fight. You know, I think that in round one we got Melsik who gets out to a hot start while Gene Silva kind of processes the data. And then Melsik starts to fade as Gene Silva starts to roll. So, hey, when that buzzer goes off and 15 minutes have expired, you know, you just need to win 2 rounds and not get finished in there. So I can honestly see Melsik Baghdasaryan pulling off this crazy upset just because the line's getting absolutely swelled to a crazy amount, like minus 700, which is ridiculous now. But more often than not, Gene Silva wins this fight, and I think that he wins it via decision over Melsik Baghdasaryan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're prop game hunting, I mean, right now the over 1.5, you know, sitting at minus 190 is the best line out there on it. Yeah, but the line's getting crazy from a DFS perspective. I mean, for Gene Silva to go out there, he's got at 9,500. He's got to go out there and get a knockout win. I mean, and he's got to get you 100 plus points for it to make sense. I mean, I think there's some other 9,000 options. I'd rather maybe save a little money and get to them as opposed to get Gene Silva. But overall, I think most likely, I think this is a kickboxing matchup. Next up, we got Alonzo Menifield taking on Julius Walker. Walker making his UFC debut here. He is plus 200 on the betting line, minus 245 for Menifield. Menifield A700 on DK. $17 on FanDuel. Walker, $7,500 on DK and $13 on FanDuel. Of course, if you watched the media scrums yesterday, Alonzo Menifield did talk about returning to 47 May. And I cannot think of the guy's been in his corner. Pat Barry will not be in his corner. Yeah. He talked about Pat Barry's been in his corner his past couple of fights. Menifield's lost back-to-back fights, both those be a knockout, including a 12-second knockout loss against Carlos Ulberg. He is 8-5-1 in the UFC. Walker making his UFC debut. He is a regional champion for 2 different promotions, Synergy FC and Peak Fighting. All of his wins have come in the first or second round. 5 of those 6 wins have come in the opening round. And this is one of the ones I feel like I can never trust Alonzo Menifield, but then also I look at Walker, I just think he's very green right now.
Yeah, so Jason, I'll tell you, man, like Alonzo Menifield is a guy I just don't trust. I mean, he's up there with Ion Cutelaba, ironically on the same card, of 2 guys I just absolutely don't trust at all. And I don't have all that much of a problem fading them, you know, and I've been wrong plenty of times about them. but I don't like guys that jump from gym to gym to gym to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I understand that he's back at Fortis, but I feel like that wasn't a healthy relationship for him to go out and seek Pat Barry to begin with. Because Pat Barry, that's like the lowest IQ decision out there. You know, yes, Rose Namajunas is one of the best fighters in the world, but I really don't think that's because of Pat Barry. I just think that's because of all her excellent coaches on the way up. Pat Barry's a very good striking coach, yes, but I don't think that he's a good MMA coach. And now Menifield's back at Fortis. I don't know, man. It just seems like searching for an answer, or maybe you see these guys every now and then, and I'm not saying that Menifield is, but people tend to overreact when they lose, and they start to try to find a reason why. Obviously, you need to find a reason why it didn't work out, but sometimes fighters place blame on coaches instead of owning up and realizing that it's your fault, you know, and maybe he came to a realization that, you know, like Fortis and Saif Saud, they're good people and he's a great coach and high IQ. Yeah, he went from one of the highest IQ gyms to one of the lowest IQ corners out there. So now you're going to backtrack, and I don't know how that dynamic's going to work. I don't know if, like, you know, Saif Saud and him are absolutely on the same page again. I don't know what the training's like. And I understand your reservations about Julius Walker. I think that Walker's a pretty damn good fighter. Hasn't had an opportunity to fight a guy in the UFC yet. He has fought Bavon Lewis, who at one time was supposed to be the next big thing. He's beaten him. He has fought Myron Davis, who is also a very talented fighter. Myron Dennis, rather. Very good striker. You know, he's fought some D1 wrestlers. But the thing that I do really like, Jason, is that he's had 10 amateur fights. So 10 amateur fights. And he is green, if you want to call that, with 6 pro fights, just because he hasn't fought under a crazy big banner. You know, he's been fighting in some promotions that aren't the most notorious. But Menifield's a guy I've always sat there and scratched my head like, I don't think this guy's all that great. He's very dangerous, yes. His power's crazy. He's strong. But, like, Azamat Murzakanov knocked him out. Carlos Olberg knocked him out. In my opinion, he lost to Dustin Jacoby. He guillotined Jimmy Crute, who Jimmy Crute, for whatever reason, has just never fulfilled his potential. Had a draw with him. Beat Misha Serkinov, who's not good. Beat Askar Mojarov, who's a fraud. Lost to William Knight, who at one time threw like no punches in his fight against the karate guy. You know who the hell I'm talking about. Fabio Charant was on short notice. Ed Herman was 59 years old. Got knocked out against OSP. You know, I could just keep going on, and it's just like, I know that Julius Walker doesn't have any notable names yet, but the names that Menifield has, a lot of them are like low to mid, in my opinion, for the division. So this is a volatile division to begin with. On paper, what should happen is Menifield knocks out Julius Walker. I've seen Julius Walker get hit and stunned against Myron Dennis, and his legs kind of went out from underneath him, but he still turned that fight around and ended up finishing him in the same exact round. So I'm going to take a shot on him, man. I think that, you know, Julius Walker has already been training for a fight. So he's supposed to fight Mark Courier. So I like the fact that he's been training for a bout. And I'm going to take a shot, Jason. I'm going to say that Julius Walker beats Alonzo Menifield. And mainly it's because of the division and how I just don't trust Alonzo Menifield. Menifield should go out there and just completely smoke Julius Walker. But this is DFS. I'm searching for underdogs to try to come through for me when nobody else wants them to, or nobody else thinks that they're gonna. The UFC experience, 14 fights for Menifield means a lot, but like I said, 7, 8, 9 of those are against guys that I just don't really. Shania Twain don't impress me that much. So give me Julius Walker here.
I did not have a Shania Twain reference coming up I'm on bingo card for this podcast.
Bro, I got a headache. I'm over here just trying to make this work. And Shania Twain, hey, Bree likes that. Bree likes her. I used to jam to Shania. I know that song. And Alonzo Menifield, you don't impress me that much, all right? So
I mean,
give
look,
me Julius Walker.
yeah, I mean, I think from a DFS aspect, to me, if I'm playing this fight, I take Walker or I move on from the fight. I just, it kind of, it feels like a matchup that has been made by the UFC because this is, hey, Alonzo, if you don't get the job done, you're done. You can
Think so?
Yeah, I mean, I if he goes out there, especially if he gets finished again, yeah, I think he gets cut.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Especially, I think this is a bad situation for him too because this guy's got no UFC fights.
Yeah, I mean, look, and trust me, we're about 4 months away from cut season coming.
Yeah.
Once the Contender Series starts, cut season has begun. That's just what's going to happen that way. But I think the official pick for me is going to be Menifield. But DFS wise, Walker would be where I'd want to go there. Next up, we've got Ian Cutelaba taking Ibo Aslan. Aslan minus 180 betting favorite, plus 150 for Cutelaba, who's 77 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. Ibo, 8,500 on DK. And $16 on FanDuel. Cutelaba is coming off a split decision win, which did snap a 4-fight losing streak, seeking back-to-back wins for the first time since 2017-2018. Ibo is 2-0 in the UFC. Both those wins have come by TKO and KO. All of his pro wins are by TKO or KO, and his only pro loss did come via submission, Pete. And this is another underdog that I'm kind of intrigued in.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, you got Cutelaba with 17 UFC fights, Ibo Aslan with 2. Cutelaba is one of the biggest knuckleheads in the company, right? Like he wastes more energy at the weigh-in than the actual fight. When he laces up his wrestling shoes, you see his true skill set. He's talented in the grappling department. His ground and pound is ferocious. His wrestling is very good. His striking. Offensively, it's dangerous. Defensively, he's too reckless for my liking. Lots of holes, lots of ways for his opponents to capitalize. His chin is suspect, in my opinion. And Ibo Aslan hits so damn hard, and he's very, very good at finding the mark striking. Now, you could go back and you can look at that one defeat that Ibo Aslan had where he got submitted, and he was able to seek revenge and go up against Anton Turkalj again. And, he was able to stuff some takedowns in that fight. I think he stuffed 8 takedowns in that bout. And, sometimes you need a rude awakening or a loss in a certain area to really put your focus on your holes. And I think personally that's what Ibo Aslan did because since then he's been on a complete tear. I mean, he has beaten 6 fighters in a row. All by finding a way of knockout via ground and pound or standing up. So his punches are very, very dangerous, and he's going up against the guy that I don't necessarily trust the chin of. Ian Cutelaba has fought a lot in the UFC. He's also been rocked a lot in the UFC. Pretty sure I picked Ivan Arslan to beat him. Pretty sure I picked Felipe Lins to knock him out. I'm pretty sure I picked almost everybody against this guy. I just don't trust him. And I understand that his skill set is great in the wrestling department. But when you're in the higher weight class, if you really don't dedicate your time to just wrestle immediately, you are so live to get knocked out in a dangerous division. So yeah, this is where I don't blame people for wanting to get to Ian Cutelaba with the 17 UFC fights. Attempting we would need him to attempt 8 takedowns in this 15-minute fight. If he does that, he could have some success because, Ibo Aslan outside of the Anton Turkalj rematch hasn't necessarily had to defend takedowns in the UFC yet. So this is a spot where Aslan could get tired and, Cutelaba, the UFC experience shines through and he just either gets a great dominant decision or he's able to find a finish after utilizing his wrestling. But I'm not going to buy it. I'm not buying it. I think that Cutelaba is too untrustworthy for me. And if I got to take a stand on a 50-50 fight, I'm going to. And I'm just going to go with the guy that I think can actually find the mark. Ibo Aslan's been training at Tiger Muay Thai in prep for this camp, and I know that he's sprinting a lot. I know that he's wrestling a lot, obviously striking a lot, but I think that he's prepared, man. I just Cutelaba's a wild card and one that I don't really want to put my money on. But in a 150 max, totally understand it. But for a single entry for me, I'm going to take some shots on some different underdogs. So give me Ibo Aslan to knock out Cutelaba.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like a single entry build, I don't think Cutelaba is somewhere I want to go. He'd be more of a, a large field GPP where, whether I'm doing 150 or I'm doing 20, whatever line says, I'd get to him. But do kind of have concerns about where that fantasy score upside could be in terms of that one. Next up, we got Fili taking on Costa. This is a straight up pick 'em matchup, -110 on both sides. Fili's $8,200 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. Costa, $8,000 on DK. And $16 on FanDuel. Fili is coming off a split decision win against Cub Swanson, seeking back-to-back wins for the first time since 2019. Costa 2-2 in the UFC. To note, both those losses came at lightweight. Of course, this is at featherweight. And he has 21 career victories, 7 wins by TKO KO, 7 wins by submission, and 7 wins via decision, Pete.
Yeah, I know. This fight's tough, and obviously it's the pick'em of the card. You got Andre Fili, a guy with 23 UFC fights, going up against a guy in Melquizael Costa who has 4 UFC fights. I've always liked Andre Fili. I don't know why, but I've always liked him. I've always picked him. And it's hard for me not to do so here. I mean, this reminds me of Angela Hill last week, where like Angela Hill has all the UFC experience. The algorithm likes her and the volume is there. She's improved. Andre Fili is pretty similar where he's grown up in the UFC banner. He's got 23 fights in the UFC compared to Melquizael's 4. And Melqui Costa has not really impressed me that much. I mean, I'm going to keep saying that today, but I don't know why the hell I'm saying that, but it's just the truth. Beating Austin Lingo and then beating Shailan Nursulton doesn't do it for me. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not in love with this guy's wrestling. I think that he picked up 3 takedowns over Austin Lingo, 2 against Steve Garcia, 2 against Shailan Nursulton. Was able to reverse position once, but I don't know. The Steve Garcia fight just showed to me he's not what I thought he was. And I thought that this guy, Melquizael Costa, fighting out of southpaw stance, very dangerous kicks, good hands, good submission grappling, solid wrestling. I don't know. I just expected a lot more. And him debuting against Thiago Moises was a horrible matchup for him. But he's just not, I don't know. I still think that he's years removed from his prime. And if anything, I think Andre Fili going 15 minutes with Cub Swanson is way more impressive than anything that I just said about Melquizael Costa. Knocking out Lucas Almeida, beating Bill Algeo. I mean, you got Andre Fili in so many split decisions all the time. Going 15 minutes with Nathaniel Wood. I'm a big Nathaniel Wood guy, but that was a competitive fight. So it's I'm not going to be picking Melquizael Costa here. I know a lot of people like the youth advantage. They don't trust Andre Fili. Andre Fili, can kind of let fights slip from his fingertips. The striking, I have the advantage going to Fili. And I even have the wrestling going to Fili here. So I just think it's an Andre Fili vet lesson. I think he's going to pick up another decision victory. Not a fight that I necessarily love for DFS. And Fili can switch stances. So it's not a true orthodox versus southpaw fight where the southpaw has the true advantage. Fili will mix it up in between. He'll probably go southpaw, damage the outside of the lead leg of Melquizael Costa. So yeah, I don't really understand the Melquizael Costa love this week, but maybe I'm the wrong analyst. But I don't know. I'm gonna go with Andre Fili.
And if you want a little dangerous, Andre Fili by split decision plus 800.
There you go.
If you want to live a little dangerous in terms of that one, as you were talking, I was like, let me just look up what is Andre Fili via split decision. So, but yeah, I do like Andre Fili in this one. Next up, we got Abdul-Malik taking on Nick Klein. Malik a minus 1,500 favorite in this one, plus 750 for Klein. Abdul-Malik, 9,700 DK, 23 on FanDuel. For Klein, he's 6,500 DK and $8 on FanDuel. Abdul-Malik won his UFC debut at the end of last year, a first-round TKO against Dusko. All of his wins have come via finish. For Klein, this is his UFC debut, won on Dana White's Contender Series in 37 seconds. Trains out of Pura Vida BJJ MMA up there in Milwaukee. And really, I know everyone's going to want to roster Abdul-Malik. And I mentioned earlier in the show, this has been the year of prospects going down. I just wonder what happens if Klein gets this one to the ground.
Yeah, so the thing is that Nick Klein is pretty damn talented in the submission department. Mansur Abdul-Malik is very talented, very physical, good wrestler, good hands, good striking, excellent ground and pound. If you look at his pro record, even his amateur record, he's only been out of the round one once, and that was against Wes Schultz, who is the fighter I was talking about on the Contender Series, where Wes Schultz is a very, very talented submission grappler from Pura Vida BJJ, oddly enough. So it's a teammate of Nick Klein. So they kind of already have a beat on this guy of how they need to get this fight to help them out, or how they need to win this bout. And if you look at Wes Schultz, his amateur career, he was picking up tons of submissions. Even his pro career, he goes at he reminds me of like a Damian Maia type of style, like good takedowns, lots of flow, lots of transitions, attempts, and just constant scrambling. And we saw Mansur Abdul-Malik get fatigued in that fight, but still ultimately was able to pull it off. Now you got Mansur Abdul-Malik going up against a big underdog, and Nick Klein, who is also a big underdog on the Contender Series. And I think that Klein has some pretty good back takes in him, so he's live to pull this off. I mean, he's riding 3 rear naked chokes in a row. We have seen him get ground and pounded back in 2022 against Dorian Dokaj, and also was knocked out against Niall Bartling as an amateur in round 1 via punches. So I don't know, man. This is a volatile fight, and it's one where I heard Nick Klein talking about, like, my goal is to survive the first 2 rounds and then try to take it from there and see if Abdul-Malik can keep up with me in the later half of round 2 and in round 3. And it's just like, at least he knows he's going to have to weather a storm. Is he going to be able to do so? I'm not necessarily sure. The odds suggest he's absolutely not going to be able to. But at least that Nick Klein has an idea of what he needs to do to succeed. And he's kind of seeing the same things that I saw against that Abdul-Malik has, and it's a hole in that gas tank. You're used to finishing everybody. What happens when you don't find the finish? So I don't know. I don't know if Nick Klein's the guy to do it, but I think that he's going to bring up a great method of beating Abdul-Malik for other people in the future. So yeah, give me Mansur Abdul-Malik here to pick up a ground and pound finish. But I do like what Nick Klein is talking about, and he's been an underdog in the past, and he's come through. So we shall see if he's able to do it this week. But 150 max, I think just because of that interview, I would increase my ownership to Nick Klein. But Mansur Abdul-Malik at 9,700, I think, is a very chalky but very highly likely to be a part of the optimal lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you on there, and just because of the amount of underdogs I like, I was able to get to them if I wanted to get there. Next up, we got Ricky Simon taking on Javid Basharat. Basharat is a minus 260 betting favorite, plus 210 for Ricky Simon. Simon 7,100 DK, $11 on FanDuel. Basharat 9,100 DK and $19 on FanDuel. Ricky has lost 3 in a row. 2 of those 3 losses have come via decision. He had won 5 in a row prior to this losing streak. Basharat coming off a decision loss against Ayman Zahabi, where he was a 9-1 betting favorite, and 4 of his 5 UFC fights have gone the distance, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell? I like Basharat, but man, he really let us down last time. And Ayman Zahabi, a part of TriStar It's just like they turned a corner, and Ayman Zahabi especially, but it was a very disappointing fight for Javid Basharat, priced at 9,500, scoring 26 points. Basharat, for being such a finisher on the regional scene, he's really just been a decision guy inside the UFC. 3 decision wins over Jones, Gravely, and Mendonça. The no contest, and then the decision loss to Zahabi. So that killer instinct seems to be non-existent. And I almost wonder who's the better Basharat brother. Is it Javid or is it Farid? I think it's Farid. Basharat is probably the better one. But they're both good, and they're both very, very sound in all areas. And Ricky Simón is one of my favorite fighters, and I used to say he was one of my favorite fighters. And I don't feel any different opinions towards him, but the past 5 fights he's just been a shell of himself, in my opinion. Past 3 fights especially. Only landing 2 takedowns against Song Yadong, 2 against Batista, and 2 against Oliveira. Like, the way I like Ricky Simón was when he was going 6 takedowns against Kelleher, 7 against Perello, 7 against Ray Borg, 6 against Font. Like going out there and just wrestling his ass off. And Ricky started falling in love with his hands, or maybe he had some injuries that he's never really spoken of, or you realize how crazy shape you have to be in to wrestle that much. And as you get older, things get more difficult. And the scariest thing in the world is not losing or getting finished. It's being tired in the octagon with your opponent standing across from you. So perhaps that has something to do with it. But man, Ricky Simón sitting here at 7,100 is so damn tempting. But I don't think it's going to be an easy fight for him. And it's definitely easier than the ones he's had. It's definitely easier than Oliveira, Batista, and Song Yadong. But I still don't think like it's that much easier. Like, Basharat's damn good. It's because Basharat is going to be the better striker here. He'll calf kick like crazy. He'll defend takedowns at a pretty good rate, 85% takedown defense rate. And I just don't see the same hunger from Ricky Simón that I used to see. Like, I want him attempting 12 takedowns here. Like, that's the goal. 12 takedowns to land 5. That is the goal for me here. But I just don't see it happen. And I think that Simón, I don't know what he needs to do. But these top-end matchups, it's just not cutting it. And whenever you have an ATT satellite gym going up against somebody from true Coconut Creek ATT headquarters, and that's where Basharat's training, you always got to go with the home HQ. So we're going to go with Basharat here to pick up a decision win.
And one of the things we have seen with Ricky Simón has done some cross-training with Team Oyama in California, along with doing the work there at ATT. You used to go out to Hawaii a lot with Tyson Nam, but really more when he trains with Tyson now, it's more Tyson coming to him. I like Basharat overall, but, look, if when you're looking, say you're looking to put 3 underdogs in your DFS lineup, I see why you would go to Ricky Simón, especially if he can get those takedowns. Next up, we've got the UFC debut of Austin Vanderford taking on Nikolay here. Nikolay is the betting favorite here at -130. Vanderford +110. Vanderford 7,800 on DK. Well, we have no lines on FanDuel. 8,400 for Nikolay. Nikolay lost his UFC debut back in August against Danny Barlow. That was a split decision. He trains out of King's MMA. 9 of his 12 wins have come by TKO, KO. Of course, Vanderford coming off a first-round victory at LFA 194. Prior to that, he had lost back-to-back fights in Bellator against Gegard Mousasi and Aaron Jeffrey. Those at 185 pounds. I believe this is at 175. To me, Vanderford's much better at 170. I was actually surprised that this did not come for Lance Gibson Jr. I would have thought that this would have been his opportunity coming off a win. Of course, he's another fighter that's recently been released by the PFL, which is some odd decisions being made on who they're keeping and who they're not keeping over there in the PFL. It's just, I'll just say it's kind of surprising to see what's happening over there here. But Austin Vanderford, to me, I think is another interesting underdog this week, Pete.
Yeah. So, Veretennikov is a guy that I'm not really impressed with. I mean, he's a slow-paced fighter, and with slow pace, you really got to have like the most damaging shots, or you have to have like the best defense in the world. And, from what we saw, in his debut. I mean, 54% strike and defense, 60% takedown defense. Granted, it's one fight, but everything I saw from the eye test of Veretennikov was just like, okay, he seems just mid to me. He doesn't seem anything special. I think that he's probably just been a very good training partner for a lot of people. His The urgency seems to be non-existent. The power, he has some sneaky pop in his hands, but I don't know, man. I'm looking at him and I'm just not all that impressed. But I will tell you that I think that we need this fight with it being on short notice for both guys, and Veretennikov originally being scheduled to fight Billy Goff months ago, and then pulling out of that, and then getting on this, and then picking up another fight where Billy was supposed to be on this card, and now Veretennikov is without an opponent. It's just the weirdest shuffle in the world. I don't really understand what the hell's going on. Maybe there were some injuries, but I know who Austin Vanderford is. And Vanderford, yes, he's been knocked out, and when he gets hit, he's chinny at times, but his wrestling is excellent. His grappling is sneaky. And I do think that his striking is improving. I mean, he's at American Top Team day in and day out. And we saw it in his most recent fight where he established the jab. And, man, that jab was the reason why he won that fight. Austin Vanderford's wrestling's always going to be there. His grappling's always going to be there. It's his striking defense that needs work, and his striking offense to get his opponents to respect him. And for anybody that's at Coconut Creek or at the main headquarters of American Top Team, like, it's just like, I like that. And that Vanderford, they got money, and they can just invest in training, just completely soaking themselves in the lifestyle of mixed martial arts. So, yeah, I just think, like, Veretennikov doesn't impress me. Vanderford, I've seen him, go out there against some high-level competition in Bellator, and he's won me some money in the past because of his wrestling. He just needs to not get knocked out in this fight, and I think that he wins. I was trying to see if he was training and staying in shape, and I dove through his socials and through his tag posts, and I saw that he was sparring Marvin Vettori, who happened to be at American Top Team now. So it's just interesting, and I think that Vanderford is in a good spot to come through here. So I'm going to back him here as an underdog. So give me Austin Vanderford to pick up a decision victory, or I'll go decision. But I think that the wrestling into submission skills could be super live to pull off a victory as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the wrestling upside. Also, as I mentioned, I like when he's at more than 170 pounds and 185 pounds, where we're seeing some of those failures come in there. Next up, we got Ruziboev taking on Eric. Eric making his UFC debut here is plus 235, minus 290 for Ruziboev. Ruziboev, $9,200 DK, $19 on FanDuel. McConico, $7,000 on DK. And $10 on FanDuel. McConico is a product of the MMA Lab. 7 of his 9 wins have come by stoppage for Ruziboev. He's coming off that decision loss in May of last year against Joaquin Buckley. And both of his UFC wins here have come by TKO, KO. And MMA Lab has typically been a gym we do like to back.
Yeah, so the MMA Lab is a very good gym. And, I think that McConico is solid. I think that he's good. And I think that he will probably be picking up some victories inside the UFC. I just don't know if I like it here against Ruziboev. I understand McConico has been training for a bout. He's going to come in here in good shape. He's going to come in here ready. But you're going up against a physical nightmare in Ruziboev, who's gigantic for the division. And then not to mention Ruziboev, I think, can only improve upon his UFC debut and his most recent UFC fights. He's got 3. And he has fought some top competition. So, like, he's fought Joaquin Buckley. And I think, like, that means something to me because he was able to go 15 minutes with Joaquin Buckley in a crazy fight. Knocked out Ferreira and knocked out Dumas. But since then, like, I think it was the second fight, he made a transformation to join Marquez BJJ down there in Philly. So, that's a very good gym with Joe Pyfer and what's his name, who fought last week, Andre Petrosky, and all those crazy talented guys in Philly. So I think that, the bodies within that 170-pound, 185-pound weight class and up, it's a very talented room. So I really like Ruziboev here. I understand McConico is good, but I think that Ruziboev might be one of my favorite plays on the slate, just mainly because of the training situation. Like I liked him to begin with, and now he's a part of Marquez BJJ against the guy debuting. McConico's good, but I've seen McConico get stung with some punches too, and I think that Ruziboev can knock him out. So I obviously always worry about Ruziboev's takedown defense and his wrestling just not being up there. But you are going to improve that at the team in Philly. There's no way around it. You got Sean Brady, you got Joe Pyfer, you got Petrosky. You're going to improve, or you're just going to get destroyed every single day. So give me Ruziboev here.
Samuel, I do appreciate the super chat. I always appreciate you showing your support for what we do here at Fight HQ. And we got one more fight left. And Pete, do I dare say it? Am I going to make Modestas Bukakis a core play this week for me?
Can
you talk me off this ledge? Because I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about developing lineups, and and Modestas is a guy that, God, I feel like you want to trust him but then I'm just like, man, we've seen when things go bad for him. Taking on Rafael here, who's a plus 230 betting underdog, minus 280 for Bukakis, who's 9,300 DK, $21 on FanDuel. Rafael 6,900 on DK and $10 on FanDuel. And I just, I was developing some lineups right before the show, and I'm like, God, man, am I really going to put all this faith in Modestas Bukakis? Can you talk me off this ledge?
Yeah, I'm about to. I'll tell you what, Modestas Bukakis is a guy that I've backed probably more times than I should. He has 8 UFC fights compared to Cerqueira's 1. So the UFC experience between 2 stays is significant here. I mean, he has 8 fights to Cerqueira's 1. Bukakis, his boxing is fine. His wrestling is mid-tier. His takedown defense is, I think, kind of surprisingly decent. I just think that there's so many big performances from this kid if he actually put his foot on the gas pedal. He's a guy that tends to coast a little bit too much for my liking, and he kind of almost lets fights slip out of his hands a little bit, which kind of drives me nuts as somebody who's such a big favorite on this card. So, Bukakis probably can go out there and get more finishes than he does. He has good boxing, just good overall skills. And I'm a fan. I like him. The problem is just the lack of urgency. So that's my thing is you're going to be holding the ticket or holding a lineup with Modestas Bukakis. And unless he does something drastic, he's just kind of playing with his food or just staying alive and content. I'm up 2 rounds. And instead of going out there and okay, now I'm going to put a stamp and I'm going to finish this guy. I think that the finishes should be higher than they are for Modestas Bukakis, and largely they're only against low-level opposition. Cerqueira is a guy that comes out of the same team that Jailton Almeida is from. So he trains alongside Jailton Almeida. He's a big guy, 6'3", 76-inch reach, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. This guy's used to being the bully in the octagon. He's been outside of round 1 3 times. Once was a decision. Once his fight ended in the second round via KO, and another time he finished a fight in round 2 via KO. So I think the round 3 and decision market for him is so untested. So a Bukakis late finish is something that I think is on the table. I think that Cerqueira, likes to strike, likes to throw a ton of kicks, can look to change levels and try to take down Modestas Bukakis. But Modestas Bukakis, his takedown defense sits at 71%. So does Cerqueira really have the gas tank to push when you're such an early finisher? I think round 1's super dangerous for Modestas Bukakis, but I think it gets easier as every minute ticks off the clock. So Cerqueira is an interesting underdog here at 6,900. And I don't blame anybody for wanting to put him in their lineup. It is a division that's super volatile. But on paper, Modestas should make this look easy. The problem is he just doesn't. So give me Modestas Bukakis either round 3 or decision. I'm going to say decision. But it's one where, I hope he goes out and proves me wrong and he puts a crazy, crazy score because he's capable. He's totally capable. But, I'm just going to think it's going to be a lackluster decision. and he's going to just do the same shit that he always does, dancing around his opponents, scoring 51 in a 15-minute decision, scoring 56 in a 15-minute decision against Zach Pauga and Tyson Pedro. So that's kind of my anticipation, but I hope I'm wrong. But give me Bukaskas here.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm scared to do it, but I think I'm going to do it. I think I will have Bukaskas in my core lineup there. We'll see how that one goes there. Of course, we'll get into some other listener questions here in a moment. We'll get our straight-up fight picks right now. Main event. I'm going to say Song Yadong, but, man, I'm tempted to go the other way.
Stop. I'm going Song Yadong. I mean, I'm not a Cejudo guy, so I'm going Song Yadong.
All right, give me underdog number 1, Brandon Allen.
I'm going to stick to my guns with Anthony Hernandez.
Underdog number 2, Rob Font.
Yeah, I'll go Rob Font here.
Gene Silva.
Gene Silva.
Underdog number 3, Julius Walker.
Oh, yeah. I just want to pass on the fight, but give me Julius Walker.
Underdog number 4, Ian Cutelaba.
Go to therapy. I'm going Ibo Aslan.
Fili. Abdul-Malik. Basharat. Underdog number 5, Mr. Van Zandt.
Yeah, there we go. Mr. Van Zandt for me as well. Jesus. God.
Ruziboev. And Bukaskas.
Might as well do that 6th one, too. Just put 6 underdogs in there, Jason.
Yeah. Andrew over in the YouTube chat says, we thinking 3 dogs max in a lineup. Man.
I don't know if I would ever put any limitations like that because you just don't know.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to put it. I think you could go different ways there. Tristan with his usual questions here. Best leverage play. Haven't seen what ownership is. I would say I'd be interested to see what is Gene Matsumoto's ownership. Could be
that's exactly what I was saying. Yep.
That could be the play of you might be able to find a little bit of value there because I think so many people are going to be on Rob Font that you might be able to find a little bit of value. I'm just going to check out and see if ownership projections have been
his takedown defense. Rob Font's takedown defense is 44%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't have ownership projections yet, but that would be the one that I would really look at in terms of their.
It's almost like maybe that's why the odds are what they are. They think like he's just gonna go to the takedown well.
Yeah, I think you gotta look at these 9,000 options and just say, okay, who is the fighter that people are not going to get to? A couple weeks ago it was Wayne Kong, and I talked about that. That to me is one I would look there. Best takedown upside. When you look at what Fluffy Hernandez has done in his last 5 fights, man, how can you not think of hey, that's a guy that you target when you're looking for takedowns?
Yeah, him. It's got to be Cejudo to get takedowns, but Cutelaba's got to be another one too.
Yeah. Rank the 9K options. So our 9K options this week: Hernandez, Silva, Abdul-Malik, Basharat, Ruziboev, and Bukaskas. I would say number 1, just because of the high upside of a TKO finish, I would put Abdul-Malik at number 1. But really, you need that first round finish out of him for that one to really pay off. 2, I would probably say. I think it's between Ruziboev and Basharat for me. So I would say that's 2A, 2B. Then I would go Bukaskas. Then I would go Hernandez, and the last one would be Silva, just because of price point and thinking that thing goes 15 minutes.
Yeah, so for me, if I'm ranking the 9,000 options, I'm going to go Abdul-Malik 1, Hernandez 2, Ruziboev 3, Silva 4, Basharat 5, Bukaskas 6.
Now Sam's got his question here. He goes, top best plays.
Who knows, bro?
Man, it's
Who knows?
It's a tough week. In terms of like, I found myself more developing my lineups starting with underdogs as opposed to looking at a high end option. I found myself really starting with Brandon Allen, but but if you told me as a high end option where I would probably start, I would still say Abdul-Malik, but understanding then you're going to probably have 3 underdogs in your lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you. I probably agree with that.
All right, next one, top inside the distance fighters. I would say, Abdul-Malik, Ruziboev, Bukaskas, man. I'll tell you, his number for initial thought when I get to that, I thought, like, man, that's really low. Man, we could have a lot of damn decisions on this card.
What do you say, 5.5?
4.5.
More.
Man, I want to say more. I'm going to say less. I for some reason, I think we've got a long night of fights going here on Saturday. Live dogs. There's plenty of live dogs. Cejudo, Allen, Font. Like, if I'm from a betting perspective, Rob Font would probably be my favorite betting underdog.
I would agree.
Punt plays. We've mentioned a lot. Ricky Simon could be the really interesting punt play at 7,100. Top captain. Just thinking of if he wins, it's a 15-minute fight, and he likely gets multiple takedowns. Anthony Hernandez may be an interesting MVP captain option.
Yeah, he's like the Marab with the slate. It's hard to get away from him. Like even if you like Brendan Allen, I just think the fight makes too much sense. But the pace, like anytime you got like that Marab, it used to be the Colby Covington, that Kamaru Usman of the slate. Like, why are we overthinking it? You know what I mean? Get to it.
Value plays underneath 8K. I mean, there's a ton of them. Vanderford at 7,800, I think, is a nice value play. Cutelaba at 7,700, especially if he's able to get those takedowns. Those to me would be good value plays underneath 8,000. I feel comfortable in.
I like Julius Walker. I like Vanderford. Not feeling Cutelaba. I am worried about Rob Font's takedown defense, sitting at 44%. It's the worst on the slate.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I am very worried about that.
A core 3 for me. I would say the core 3 would be Abdul-Malik, Song Yadong, and Austin Vanderford.
Okay. I don't hate that at all.
Get some questions over here from YouTube. Dexter saying, Pete, how's Mohegan Suns BKFC? Following week you weren't on. Love to hear your take on being in the building live.
Yeah, so I mean, it was okay. I think that it's kind of what I figured it would be. I had a bunch of friends on the card. I had like 4 or 5 people that I knew on the card. Everybody with an MMA background won. So that was nice. Went out, they weren't even close. Like, they beat everybody with an MMA background, just went in there, beat the hell out of everybody. I got to tell you, I wasn't impressed with the skill set. Like, I thought it was very, very low volume. I mean, low level, like very low level. Kind of reminded me of like Rough and Rowdy to begin with. Like the prelims, lots of swinging and banging and just like super sloppy. I don't know, man. Like I could be just I try not to be. I'm not trying to be a snob with it, but amateur boxers have better technique than what I saw out there. It was brawling. Like, it is what it is. I thought I loved the ring. I thought the ring was beautiful. I think everything that they did about the show was fine. The guy that they were trying to hype up the crowd with needs to go away. He was so damn annoying. Like, my guy just would not stop. He was like a gnat, just bugging the fuck out of me the whole time. Go out of here. besides that, it was nice to see friends do well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of what I expected. It was fun because I was with my father-in-law and I was with my brother-in-law. But when I watch that, I don't hold it to the same caliber as like MMA or even high-level kickboxing. So it kind of felt like I was watching an amateur card, There were some very good talented fighters on there, like they were, but it was lots of mismatches too. So I don't know, man. It was okay. It was okay. It's nothing that I could see myself doing. I kick people too much. So, but yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a BKFC show. I've talked about it. I mean, to me, it's I don't really call it boxing.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Because it's all headshots. And look, I think BKFC does, from a business angle, they are very good at what they do. They have taken the MMA regional formula and they have perfected it. They understand no matter what city they go to, they need to fill that thing up with local fighters. And they do an excellent job of that. I mean, look, they're paying the fighters really well.
Yeah.
And I think where you look at where combat sports is right now, I think there's a lot of fighters, and this is just my personal opinion, that now really look at BKFC as the number 2 option.
Yeah, and I
outside
think
of the UFC.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, and I think it's because options are limited, right? Like, options are super limited. Options were limited with COVID, but I will tell you though, Jason, like to my surprise, they went to the body a lot up here in New England. So I don't know if that's just like a New England boxing type of thing. But there was a lot of people getting dropped by body shots, and I was like, all right, cool. Like I love that. Like digging to the body, like liver shots, solar plexus shots, faking the body, going up top. That was good. But a lot of these guys, in my opinion, were just not good. They were just not good. But all in all, it was a fun experience. Will I go again? Most likely not. But yeah, anything in my hometown, in the arena I fought in 10 plus times. I mean, that arena is awesome. So I had goosebumps because I'm in there and I feel my body feels like I'm fighting. You know what I mean? Like, so it was cool.
Yeah. It's if you would have told me 5 years ago, BKFC would be doing shows in the Mohegan Sun and would be doing shows in the state of California, I would be like, what do you want to bet?
I would have,
because
I would have bet it too.
I remember doing a podcast in Orlando with Mike Mazzulli and Andy Foster. And to say they were adamant at that time that they would never do BKFC. I mean, I'll have to find it. I'm pretty sure Andy Foster just said, ain't happening in my state, bro.
Yeah. It's just so funny how things change, But I will tell you, though, it was disappointing to hear the crowd. Like, these guys are just striking. So there's no grappling at all. And they're booing some of these fights. And I'm like, how are you booing that? Like,
bloodthirsty,
like God forbid the guy is fainting and faking or dancing around a little bit. And it was just a testament to prove, like, there's no winning. There's no winning the crowd because unless you give two guys swords and go out there, like, it's just like there's always unhappy people that just want to see blood and violence. And God forbid there was good footwork and a Dominic Cruz type of fighter. It's just like, goodness.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's why Power Slap is as popular as it is. Yeah. Let's get one more question here on this fight card. Any fights to fade entirely? And as I looked up and down this card, I don't know if I would say I would immediately X out a fight, but like there's some fights I would say I would really have reduced ownership depending on how many lines you're putting in there. Like the Menifield Walker, just because like it's probably a boom bust play either way. You kind of like with Menifield, I kind of wonder, could we see a very labored approach because understanding you lost 2 in a row, you're taking on a guy making his UFC debut. Maybe you try to, Maybe Fili Costa doesn't score as well as you'd hope, even though you do like the price point there. But like, is there any other fights that maybe the Silva and Melsik fight? Just because of if it ends up just being a 15-minute kickboxing matchup and there's no knockdowns, no takedowns, is maybe not ideal for DFS.
I think the 8,200, 8,000 fight makes sense. I think I can see that going 15 minutes. I can see the first fight of the night not being optimal. I don't know. This fight card is just kind of okay. It's a little tough for betting, and it's the way the salaries are. I'm just coming across lineups that I just don't love. And for a single entry type of approach, I'm just like, where's my lineup? I'm trying to develop it, and no matter what I do, it's just like, I don't know. I hate it. So I don't know. It's just how the week is. Thanks, guys, for tuning in for another episode. We appreciate it. If you hit that like button, get us over 100 likes, help us get to 2,000 subscribers. I think we're only like 10 away, and then the next goal is going to be 5,000. Make sure you guys join the Discord in the description below, and hope you guys win some money. You guys did better than I did last week. But 7-5 with the algorithm was decent. It's a winning percentage, so that's okay. And we'll see how it goes this week.
And you talk about using those Sims tools. We do have an offer from Stochastic. Get 15% off any MMA subscription that they do have. You can use the links are below for that. Also, you can use a promo code FightHQ to take advantage of that 15% off. And I'll tell you this, probably on Saturday afternoon, I'll be over at Stochastic. I'll be looking at those ownerships. I'll be going the Sims tools. It's really kind of, especially one of the things I found myself doing with those Sims tools over there is I'll take my single entry core lineup. I'll put it into that Sims tool just to kind of see what it spits out in terms of an ROI. So those are some interesting tools to go out there. And I think Pete, I'm probably more like you, where I probably just rely on my fight knowledge than anything else.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. It's hard, right? It's almost better to not know anything about the sport, and just kind of just attack it like that. Like my best sport for betting, even though I am pretty knowledgeable with it, is tennis. I'm pretty damn good with tennis. But I will tell you that for whatever reason, just had an epiphany of what I think could happen in a fight that I wasn't really expecting. I kind of worry about Andre Fili taking a left round kick to the body to the liver. I don't know why that just popped in my head, but Melquizael Costa has a good left leg, and I don't know. I'm looking at these scores that my algorithm likes, and I'm like, huh. And I just kind of replayed some Melquizael Costa kicks, and I wonder. I can see Fili fold into a body kick, so I don't know. Who the hell knows? But we'll see.
Of course, we do have that DraftKings contest up as well. So as always, we appreciate everyone who tunes in for this episode of Fight HQ. I'll be back live in about a little less than 3 hours doing the MMA Report podcast, where I'll be talking about PFL fighters. Oh, man. Corey Anderson, the latest one to complain about not getting a fight.
Yeah, he'll be released. All these guys, I don't even understand why the PFL exists.
Dude, it is.
If you want out, just say it, and then they release you.
Oh, man. You look at the Aaron Pico. I've never seen Aaron Pico do so many interviews.
Yeah, he wants out.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that he's saying he's willing to sit out a year so they can't match any contract, I'm like, man, this is. And Corey Anderson had a tweet earlier, basically that he's being told they can't get him a fight till July. I'm just like, this is. And I was joking with somebody the other day. I go, how long until Johnny Eblen starts chirping off? Yep, it happened yesterday.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting for that to happen a long time ago. I see these guys fight, and I know I can beat them. He spars Strickland every day, and when he's at Extreme, cross training and all that stuff. But like, he knows what he can do to Strickland.
Yeah, I will say this: that Sean Strickland, Eric Nixick, it's taken a turn.
Did you see what Nixick said? He said I did it to publicly motivate him, and I realized that was a mistake.
Yep. I did see that. Justin James was on a podcast. Justin James is one of the coaches at Extreme Couture. He kind of noted there may be some financial situations there too.
Yeah.
It seems
pay your coaches.
Yeah, it seems to be getting ugly. I mean, I'll say this: at least Nixick realizes, I mean, look, this is. going on an internet show and 30 minutes after you have a conversation with a fighter after you get back from across the world, probably not the smartest decision.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Emotions can get the best of you, and I think that's what Nick's. But look, Eric Nixick is one of these coaches that he will give you his opinion. He will give you his opinion. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, it's and every time I see John Wood walk into the octagon, I think of you.
That poor bastard. I know nothing about him other than for whatever reason, I'm like, man. Yeah, just find him over the whole camp overrated. That's really all it is. But that poor bastard, yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, he's just he's on the receiving end.
Every time I see him walking down the octagon, I'm like, let me text Pete.
Watch him be the nicest guy in the world too, and I don't mean it, but it's just like the whole. I don't know. You guys know I've been through it all. But.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's always going to be teams that you back more. You want to back, and teams you say you don't want to back there. So we'll see how it goes down. UFC Seattle Saturday, lock 6 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, if you got any questions, hit us up in Discord or right here in the YouTube chat. We'll talk to you next week right here on the Fight HQ podcast.